Oh, yeah. Bless and love, my lords. Welcome to another live interview by Red Lion. I'm joined here today by our co-host, of course, Dudley.
Hey, what's up? Nice to be here, guys.
How's it going, my dude?
Hey, I'm like busy preparing all our shiz for New York, so that's gonna be cool
I
stuff.
know. Shut up. Stop
I'm not
complaining.
complaining. I'm excited, man. I'm not complaining. It's the opposite.
Me
We have
too. Me too. I'm
we
joking.
have
I'm joking.
postcards, stickers, banners. I don't know, whatever you just like imagine.
Oh, don't tell me. I'm so
Yeah.
excited. Uh, what a great day today to be chatting with Shane Lavalette. I hope I pronounced that correct. How's it going, sir?
Hello. Hey, I'm happy to join you all. Great energy coming into the space. I like it.
Hey, welcome.
We are trying. We are trying.
Yeah.
How are you doing? We have chatted online quite a few times, but it's the first time that we are actually chatting with voice. So very nice to meet you.
Oh, likewise. Yeah, I was trying to think back to when we first met, and it must have been summer of 2021, which was around the time that I started getting into minting my own work as NFTs. But I remember you did some interesting projects with my friend. Robin Friend, actually.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. The photographer,
Yeah, a
right?
long time ago. So yeah, it's great to be on here and have I guess a deeper opportunity to chat with you. It's good to hear your voice.
Yes, man, Robin friend, that was like so long ago. I almost forgot we did that. Like it's been like almost 2 years
Well,
now, man.
yeah, 2 years in this
Crazy.
space is
In my mind, I remember him like a new artist into the scene, but that's not the case anymore. Time
I
flies.
know, and that's like 20 years in NFT time. So
Okay, first things first. Let's start with your story, my man, and like a little bit of your background, and give us a little bit of a TLDR on like how did you get into art? Maybe some part of your early life until today.
Oh wow, that's a big question. Well, let's see. If I go way back, my interest in photography probably started when I was in high school. I was lucky enough to have a class and a black and white darkroom class at my high school. I grew up in Vermont, and there was this sweet lady, Miss James, who was really passionate about photography, and the library that was connected to the school didn't have a lot of photo books, but I remember seeing Diane Arbus and Edward Weston, and sort of all the photo classics that you might think of. And I don't know, I just remember the magic of this darkroom. It's kind of like a typical photographer story, getting in a black and white darkroom for the first time and seeing images appear before you is just kind of transfixing, and definitely sucked me in. And I think when it became time to go out into the world and study something and explore something, in a richer way, it was definitely photography and art that was compelling me. So I went off to Boston, where I studied at the School of the Museum of Fine Arts and Tufts University, and I focused on photography there, and developing my own practice. I think it was around that time that I started a photography blog. This was like 2000, I don't know, 2003 or something like that. It was kind of this golden age of blogging before social media really took off in an even bigger way. And in some ways, there's some parallels, I think, to that time. Like there was this whole big, exciting world of people on the internet who were excited about the same thing as me, photography. And everybody started these blogs and started exchanging ideas and conversations about art and photography. And just writing about artists and doing interviews with artists and things like that was something that, even as a student, it reinforced my interest in, perhaps having some sort of curatorial role and photography as well. So being able to work with other artists, whether that's on exhibitions or, book projects or things like that. And then, long story short, I worked on a few photographic projects, which we can dive into at some point and talk about. But one of them, which was a big commission for the High Museum of Art in Atlanta, on the tail end of making all this work, one summer, and I think it was probably 2010, 11, I ended up getting this opportunity to, apply. Well, actually, I did a residency first at an organization called Lightwork. And it's this great photography nonprofit that's based in upstate New York. Spent a bunch of time there scanning film and processing that photography work, and it ended up, being the prints and the photographs that were shown and collected by the museum. But I connected with this amazing space, this kind of, in some ways, sort of like it is a physical manifestation of this NFT world. It was like this community facing space where people could come together and kind of meet and cross pollinate around photography. And it turned out that the associate director was leaving right around the time that I was there for my residency. So I applied for a job and was lucky enough to land that. And that's kind of what led me into the world of nonprofits and curating. So
yeah, that was in Atlanta. Is this where you're from?
This was in upstate New York, actually. So unrelated to the museum that's in Atlanta, but the photographic work I kind of brought to that institution to work on and develop. And then just sort of by coincidence, it ended up leading to a job opportunity for me. So suddenly I was
always one thing leads to the next, right?
Yeah, and that was like really, I think, maybe the first professional opportunity I had to work with artists beyond helping artists publish photography books and things like that, for example, which I was doing for a few years prior. And at Lightwork, I was there for about 10 years, so a decade of working on exhibitions and various projects. Probably 100 artists came through the residency program, the same one that I went
wow,
through. Wow,
that's really, really cool, man.
It was very cool. Yeah, I loved it. And it sort of ended up leading into other stuff that I did and other passions. But I think I curated about 50 exhibitions when I was there and worked on maybe 70 or 80 photo books.
Wow. Curating in real life is like probably a dream job, man. Like the actual, like every day of it, I bet it's like really exciting. Or is it stressful?
Oh, I mean, it's only stressful in that, you're kind of in this constant flow of, turning over new exhibitions and new shows and new projects. So sometimes, you're planning enough out that you don't really have those moments to kind of sit back and, fully soak up what's on the pulse. You almost kind of feel like you're kind of half in what's happening and half, in the months and even years that are coming up. But it is absolutely a dream job. Like, I think having the opportunity to work with artists, especially kind of as a parallel to my own art practice and photography practice, is, it's just so meaningful to me. It's truly rewarding. I don't think I could feel fulfilled otherwise if I was just sort of working on my own work and kind of in my own space as an artist. I would be missing this other piece of my practice. In some ways, it's probably connected to my creative practice, I guess I would say.
I would say it also helped you shape your mind and your concepts, like getting in touch with so many people and setting up so many shows, looking at so many concepts, art, ideas. I mean, like definitely shaped you, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I found myself, even just while working there, the artists that would come through the residency program, which was the, same one that I did prior with my own work. It's like a month long experience. So you spend a month and you get a grant to support your work, and you've got 24/7 access to a space and staff support. And whenever these artists were coming through each month, you'd kind of their world and their work and their minds and their challenges and their ideas would kind of permeate your lived experience. So you start kind of living through the world of their work in this like really interesting way. So yeah, I loved that about it, and still try to find those opportunities.
And Mm-hmm. Let's talk about your punk and your punk story. Talk to us a little bit, like the story behind you getting your first punk, or like how did that happen and when?
Oh, that's a fun story. Well, I'm definitely not an early OG punk. I didn't come into NFTs until, when was that? 20 like early 2021 or so. Like, I've been interested in Ethereum more deeply since 2017, and got
I remember you were quite early though, right?
well, for
Like I remember
photography,
you've been here for quite some time, right?
yeah, but for photography, I think there were only a
Mm.
handful of artists that were working in the space. But not for NFTs, right? Like, I missed a whole wave of things happening. I wasn't here to mint a squiggle. I wish I was. Things like that. But I ended up connecting with Tony Herrera, who's a really great punk and personality and supporter of the arts, and he helped me kind of navigate that process, and ultimately, yeah, assisted me with a trade that made it all possible. He was a super super kind and generous person, and that was my experience with connecting with a lot of folks in the punks community. Actually, it was a lot of OGs who were building interesting things, who were really kind of eager and excited to collaborate, who were kind of uplifting and supporting each other. And that was what the appeal was to me. I think, is like having this opportunity to become a part of a community, to connect with some more people who were kind of building and uplifting each other. And like,
How much did you pay for your punk?
well, I traded a bunch of stuff along with some ETH that I had from selling my own photography work. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember what it worked out to at the time, but hopefully it was an okay trade for Tony. I know some of it was like cool cats or some things that have probably shifted quite a
Oh.
bit since the time, but it was, I think it was an
uh,
okay timing for me to make it happen. So
but what
yeah.
was the floor? Do you remember around
It
that
was
time?
it was probably right around where it is. I think it was 60
Mm.
ETH or something like that.
Oh. Oh, I see, I see. Wow. I think the majority of punks joined in at that around that price range. But we hear, like, at this show, we hear so many stories and so many different like point of views and regrets and everything. Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Oh yeah,
It's
of
really
course.
therapeutic.
Yeah, but fortunately for me, like, I think a lot of the punks that I really like were very minimal, like don't have too many
Mm.
attributes, and I actually gravitated to
Clean.
the female punks, quote unquote clean. That's right.
Yeah. Wow, that's really cool, man. But like since you bought your punk, you never sold it. So this is what I like. Like you joined the community and you stick with it. You stuck with it, man. Since the day you bought it.
Well, I think it's like that with most art, actually, right? Like, if you're interested in something, and sometimes there's pressures in your life that really make you have to transition, or there's moments where it can make sense to sell something or swap it for something else, or whatever that might be in the past. But yeah, I mean, I think that it is a really invaluable community of individuals and builders, and I'd hope that, at least to some extent, if I didn't literally hold a punk in my wallet, it's a community I would always probably stay connected to, because I've made so many great friends. But yeah, absolutely, as much as I'm allowed to, I'd love to keep holding, for sure.
Let's talk about your work and your process. Let's start with photography as an art form. So how do you approach it, and what is your viewpoint of photography? What is your definition of photography?
That's a great question. I think, going back to even those early days of my interest in photography, the medium of photography has always been this kind of teacher for me. It's like this thing that connects me to the world, and forces me to look deeper at it, to kind of, question things, to, have encounters and experiences, and yeah, really look at things in new ways. So, both within my own practice, which involves going out into the world and, usually making work about like culture or history or place, really like responding to the environment and things around me, and, people and these kind of chance encounters. But also with the work of, other artists who I really admire, whose work is probably really different than, what I do as an artist or what I could ever do because of, just who I am, or the kind of ideas or vision that I have. So like, I love that experience of engaging with other artists' work that shift my understanding about things, or, give me a new perspective on something. And I think photography is such a special medium because it does that so beautifully, right? It really just like transports you immediately. And then, of course, historical photographs as well are just these incredible keepers of history. And, they're these interesting and beautiful and amazing artifacts that I think, do hold value culturally and artistically, and, all of these things. So that's what excited me about photography, I think, at a young age. And I think it's what keeps me engaged in it, and looking very deeply, both at images and the world around me.
It was on another interview, an artist brought a metaphor that the photographer is like an impatient painter, which I agree and disagree at the same time with. A lot of people think that photography is just pressing a button. But besides all the technical stuff, there is a lot more that goes into that process. And it involves a lot of different like disciplines. And can you talk to us a little bit about your process and how do you go about making your photographs?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I had actually a teacher, one of my teachers that I had in college, who was a landscape photographer. And I remember one class, he basically sent everyone out into the park to, go look around and explore or take pictures or whatever they wanted to do. And naturally, everyone jumped out of the class and kind of was like chatting with their friends, and, sort of like this mode of distracted walking around. And before you know it, you're back in the classroom. And he was like, all right, now I'm going to turn out the lights. We're going to basically sit here and meditate for 5 minutes. And then you're going to go back out into the park and look around again. And this like very simple gesture of kind of encouraging everyone to pay attention to their surroundings a little bit more closely and look a bit more deeply at the world altered your, perception, or what you might gravitate to, or what you might say make pictures of or respond to. And that's something that I kind of took with me into my practice and the way that I make work, which began working primarily with a large format camera, which is a pretty slow process, right? It's like 4x5 film, and not only do you have a limited number of pictures that you might be able to make, but it's cumbersome. You've got a big camera, you've got a tripod. Processing that is a slow process. So there's intention about what you make and what you respond to in the world. And even though I kind of transitioned to working mostly with medium format film, with digital as well, there's still kind of that slowness and kind of careful looking that I think is an important part of my work and practice. But I think you're right that photography, or being a photographer, is much more than just taking a picture, especially in this moment where it's probably easier than ever to make great images. Whether you're, have just great cameras or phones in your pocket that do this, or you utilizing tools like AI or whatever it might be, interesting images are just like, there's a sea of them. But I think being a photographic artist is, I think some of that comes down to how you bring images together, how they're communicating with each other, what the story or narrative arc in the work might be, and things like that. And to some extent, I think that's what got me really interested in photography books and publishing and working with artists in that way, because they're these little vessels that sort of hold photographic projects, or as we might think of them in the NFT world, collections. And as a viewer, you can kind of move through it from beginning to end and experience the relationship between the photographs and all of that. So I think being a great editor of your work, whether you're doing it yourself or you're working with others to support you in that process, is a big part of being a photographic artist too. Yeah.
On the previous interview chat we had with another great photographer and punk, Alejandro Cartagena, he said that the photography is probably, like, we were chatting a lot about it, and he said that it's like one of the most misunderstood arts and overlooked, because when it started, it was like the painters were like, oh, we spent hours to do that, and you just did that with a click of a button. It's not the same quality. And then it was understood that as a photo, as an art form of its own. But it took many years, and now we see the same thing again with AI and painters and art. So I think that's a really interesting viewpoint. However, the paradox here, and as someone that is into books as art form, is that for photography, books are like the rock stars of art books. They are the most famous art books that are actually selling, and I think that's a paradox. So what's your opinion overall of that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there was an explosion in art and photography books that happened in the 70s, and it kind of happened all over again in maybe like the early 2000s, and like self-publishing exploded, and I think it became more and more accessible, just like explosions of photography becoming more accessible. I think the bookmaking process did as well. But I think photography works in book form, and unlike some media that it can be harder to translate into a book, like a say sculpture or even painting or whatever it might be, that you get these kind of representations of the work, which of course is interesting to engage with and experience, but it's different than a medium like photography, which can be printed really beautifully. Like you can create an actual crafted artistic object or intentional artist book of photographic works that are on paper and bound. So I think just as a vessel or a keeper of images, it is very well suited to the medium of photography. And maybe that's one of the reasons that it's been
the way I see it is like an artwork with a sequential narrative, and this is exactly what we are trying to explore with Red Lion Studios, like the book as an art form. And it was such a peculiarity, to find out that like the rock star is like the photo books. And yeah, this took us in a very deep rabbit hole, but it was such a weird thing, but the same way that photography is misunderstood, I think like books as artworks are misunderstood. And the more we go into a digital era, like the physical prints not only will be more and more rare and difficult to happen, but also when they do happen, it is something special. And when you buy them, it will be something special. And yeah, I think there is something there, and old art forms always come back to the spotlight and they are reimagined.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a craft just as much to working digitally as there is to creating outputs like beautiful photographic prints. But from a collector's standpoint, I think that there's always going to be interest in both of these things, right? And when you're seeking a print or you're seeking a physical art experience, you find that, right? And you purchase that if you want to acquire a piece that's like that. And the artist is either making the work, or it's going through usually a master printer, or someone who kind of has that skill set and obsession with the craft of production.
Yeah,
And then on the flip
it's so
side, if
hard.
you're it's so hard.
Artistic bookmaking, it's like so many crafts together, not just like people. You say people hear books or like photo books, and they immediately they think text, or like where it's like a physical art experience. They just don't get it. Like with a photo book, you can tell a full story just with your images, and someone can spend like an hour like deeply immersed in it. It's like so powerful.
Yeah. I mean, some books are like cinematic experiences, right? And the narrative and the sequence in them is just like, I mean, it truly magical to point to. But also, I started collecting a lot of like handmade artist books and like more experimental formats that were made by artists. And like, I mean, I have a lot of examples, but one really crazy one was this artist who I loved. Gosh, what's his name? Justin James Reed. He made this book that he sourced Firefly ink for, and I guess it was maybe something that was disappearing or only had access to it for a certain time. But it's this essentially UV sensitive ink that, when printed on paper, looks like nothing. It's just an all white book, but it would come with this little like blacklight flashlight, and you could turn on the flashlight and view the book in the dark and have this transformative experience into this artwork that was sort of about like space and the future, and was just very suited to this strange experience of the book. But I
I
loved
pulled it up.
anything that
It's
was.
called Dream In.
Oh, you found it?
Yeah, I think that's it. It looks like a normal book, but it has like some inverse effects or.
Yeah, I don't even remember the name of the book, but I know that when you look at it, it just looks like a all white object. Like you can see literally nothing on it. But you
Another
take the
great one
flashlight.
is Julie Chen. We found that is like the goat of art bookmaking. But yeah, an overlooked craft for sure. So by looking at this wonderful stuff, I can't stop thinking about your collections. So can you please walk us through your collections on an overview pace, and how one thing got to the next, and how the work evolved?
Sure. Well, actually, I guess the project that you have pinned up right now is a project called New Monuments. That was actually a project that I worked on partially because I did a residency with the American Academy in Rome, and I was given the opportunity to spend a few weeks in Italy to create a new project and body of work. And
Oh, wow, where in Italy?
it was in Rome.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, a very interesting place, surrounded by lots of good art and food. Yeah, it was a lovely experience in terms of spending time there. But conceptually, it was also a very exciting place to be, because the project that I wanted to work on was about history, and it was about kind of our human desire to preserve things around us, whether that's art or architecture or objects that might have an aura, sculpture, things like this. And so I knew that I wanted to spend time within these preservation and conservation departments of museums and institutions in Rome. I wanted to wander and photograph architecture and photograph sculpture, etc., and essentially mix that with what might be a little bit more like street photography or pictures that are of everyday life, and reflect a bit more of that human desire that I was interested in, right? Like how we might want to hold on to our sense of place or memories or relationships, or I don't know, our bodies, but whatever it might be, this sort of like false sense that we can preserve anything. And so it's a bit of a conceptual project, but it sort of hinges around that idea of conservation or preservation. And for that reason, I thought it was kind of interesting to bring into the world of NFTs as my first project, even though it's like a later project that I worked on. But I felt like that idea of permanence in relation to thinking about blockchain and this digital space was something that resonated with the subject matter for the work. And this was in, I don't know what it was, maybe July or August of 2021 when I minted that work. And um, I was in the process of bringing it into NFTs. I actually used the experience of working on the book to think about how to sequence and edit the photographs. Even like when I launched it on Foundation, you kind of have a platform that has some limitations in terms of the display and like the
The
sequencing
book,
of the work and things
about the
like that.
book.
Yeah, so I used the book
Yeah, that's
as
why
a
Red Lion
reference point.
Studios exist, man.
Yes.
But yeah, I know what you mean. We also were chatting in with OpenSea, and we were like, why can't we also have like a PDF format, or like we can develop a reader that can work? And they were like, no, no, no. I'm like, you guys are selling digital files, so PDF is a digital file. I don't get it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was actually I kind of understand it. It's also like a safety risk, because like you can have links there and stuff. Um, so it is a hard it is a tough cookie to crack.
Yeah, I think
But
there's still a lot of potential there in terms
mm,
of, how to innovate with using the technology to bring more of the, kind of like layers or content that you might experience in book form into this digital space. And, a lot can be there for metadata. And, even with NFTs, you can have dynamic NFTs that, almost have literal layers to them, right? Or you can like alter the images and move through them as distinct sequences, or the things that you guys have done. I know I'm not sure if you know Chris Graves, but he was experimenting.
yeah, I have a lot of his photographs.
Oh,
Oh,
cool.
we should
Yeah,
invite him to the show.
it would be great to have a conversation
Yeah.
about books sometimes. I know he had a platform that he launched and was really trying to figure out how to translate photography books into the world of NFTs, and very early. But yeah, it's still clunky. There's still kind of a challenge to it, and from an experiential standpoint, it's not fully worked out. But I'm excited about that. But my interpretation was much more basic. It was much more like, okay, this is the kind of sequence that I developed and was attached to. This is where it begins and ends. And when thinking about minting individual photographs, I knew I wanted to kind of maintain some of that reference to parts of the book anyway.
Mm-hmm. Um, the work is really amazing, but uh, you said you are experiencing some limitations with layers. So how are you planning with what you say, manifold? You said
No, it
you're
was
doing
actually
it
on
on layer.
Foundation that I
On
minted the work
foundation, yes.
originally. Yeah. So,
Sorry, I
really
mixed the
simple things
platforms.
like, by default, the thumbnails are cropped to square, or,
Mm.
you think about how to incorporate things like text. If you do incorporate text, and is it a description field, or do they kind of become their own individual NFTs, things like that. So I ended up doing a much more stripped down version that really kind of focused on the images with that project. But that's definitely something that I'm really interested in, is how projects, like many book projects that have these other elements that might be connected to but separate from the photography, can kind of find a format or relationships to the images that may exist as NFTs, but through embedding layers in the NFT.
Mm. In the art world, there are mainly, let's say, art collectors that are also collecting some photography, but there is not like a pure breed, or like it's not like so widely mainstream like to be a photography collector. What do you think is that? Why do you think people are more like reluctant to buy photographs?
I mean, there is a big world of photography collecting for sure. There's a lot of collectors that are really passionate about photography and have, um, collected very deeply with photography, which I think is also exciting. Like sometimes with artists, you might, depending on how you collect, you might only be able to acquire one piece, or you might only have the space for one. But with photography, even in physical form, if you have flat files or some storage, you can kind of collect more deeply. But it goes back to some of those like kind of silly questions around painting or kind of the uniqueness of art pieces. Sometimes there's a perspective or maybe a false sense towards photography of the amount of craft or work that goes into it, or the fact that a print might be in an edition of 10 or something like that. And so by default, sometimes there's this false devaluing of a medium like photography. And yet we know that of course you can't just press a button and pump out images that are lasting and kind of culturally and artistically resonant. I mean, they might be visually striking images, but there's real value in the artistic and cultural aspect of a medium like photography. So, but I think it's just a little bit of short-sightedness sometimes from traditional collectors that might focus on painting or sculpture or works of art that are unique, and then they see photography as something that is kind of hard to contain, right? Like you kind of have to create these editions or limit the medium of photography in some way, and you just sort of trust that there's no more than 10 of those prints or whatever it might be. But that's, I think, exactly what got me excited about the medium of photography in relation to NFTs, because it is a medium that wants to spread and travel and be seen and consumed in all these forms, and yet the technology enables this opportunity for authenticity and provenance and ownership within that digital space. So it was that shift from the idea that you have to be the one person to own the one thing, to the idea that it's this image that everybody can see and access, and yet if you want to, you can sort of check the chain and there is ownership there. But it's an embrace of, actually, I think, the desire of the medium to like spread and be viral and be seen and consumed.
Yeah. Well, I agree that editions have value and a place on the ecosystem, and like on the NFT space and the art world and the NFT photography. But like, to play a little bit devil's advocate here, as I was chatting with Alejandro the other day, we were agreeing that the beautiful thing is that the medium of photography finally has a format, a collection of like a theme, with a theme, and then one out of ones. So this basically ticks all the boxes conceptually and like for collectors. So it is a really cool way of doing it. And also from all the interviews I have watched and the content from art blogs and Snowfro, there's always the talk about like this sort of like emerging uniqueness on things. Like people want the same but a little different, a little unique of something, they have even been talking about like tile patterns in homes and stuff. So I guess like that's like to reflect that the general direction is like people want like something part of something bigger, but they want it unique. So as you mentioned, editions before, and one out of ones, and like the difficulty of like collectors like adjusting. Is it also a matter of like artists having a difficulty adjusting?
Yeah, it's interesting because very rarely with physical prints of photography are there only just one. There's always one negative, and that's actually, I think, kind of how a lot of artists think about a one of one um, NFT. I suppose it's hard to draw those parallels between the physical and digital. But I think that the idea of a one of one digital photograph or asset makes a whole lot more sense, especially when you're an artist who is maybe earlier in your career or journey as an artist. And I think where I've seen the most success with digital editions, for example, tends to be artists that um, have a bigger following or audience, or their work has maybe been it's sort of grown and been for many collectors outpriced. So it kind of presents an opportunity to grow someone's audience and create a new entry point for collectors. But for artists that might be newer, they're. I mean, I think it's always great to experiment, but I haven't quite seen it as being maybe as successful. But yeah, I think that the idea of one of something is something that is appealing to a lot of collectors within the digital space, whether it's generative art, as you said, and you can kind of recognize the algorithm and kind of the artist's hand and vision that runs through the work, and you might own this one unique, beautiful piece that's out of a collection of 500 or something. And I think the same is kind of true of photography, right? If you have a project, as I might have called it, or the kind of work that might be published in a cohesive photography book, that's going to be the sort of um, you know approach probably when you're a photographer and you're putting together NFT collection, right? You're bringing together this cohesive project. Say it has 50 photographs, right? And then they're all one of ones of 50. And, there might be, 5 really beautiful, striking portraits within that. And there might be 20, really beautiful landscapes and, a handful of still lifes. And, maybe there's a few abstract images or, whatever it is that the sort of like genres of photography that appear within a project. But those are sort of those I guess rarity elements in a way. But with something like photography, I think ultimately the kind of collecting that's the most meaningful is sort of following your heart and like what in your mind and what's sort of exciting you emotionally and intellectually. And when you respond to an image, you sort of know, right? Like you might be able to articulate it, but you might not be able to articulate it. And you sort of connect with that particular image. So I mean, I think I've been lucky that with my own work, a lot of the collectors that have gravitated to my photographs and collected them have sort of done so from that perspective, and it's been like really nice to have those conversations with collectors and understand why an image is resonating or why a group of images that they've collected they acquired together, like how they see those connections between the photographs. And then I think the same is very much true of the platform assembly that we've been working to build, which is like really a fine art focus curated art photography platform, and it kind of like encourages that mode of collecting. Like you might think of it like slow collecting or like thoughtful collecting, or I don't know what the word is for it, but it's that spending time with a project and seeing how an image is resonating with you. And when you're acquiring work that's sort of fueled by that experience.
You not only are a great artist, but you are also a great collector. What are the artists that the artists that inspire you and you learn from their work and you love to see their work? And what are the artists that you also love to collect from?
Oh yeah, great question. I mean, it's almost too many to mention. It's like asking me what my favorite films are. But there's a lot of artists in this space that I really admire. Actually, you mentioned Alejandro. He's he's a friend, and he's an artist that we worked closely with Assembly to launch the 50 Carpoolers, which was his Genesis NFT project. And that was back in the summer of 2021. And it was also that moment of like there was very little art photography in the NFT space. And I think Carpoolers is one of those projects that it just has so much depth and resonance to it. It sort of like fits in like a form that is digestible within the NFT space, and so it I think appealed to a lot of collectors at that moment. But artistically and culturally, it's one of those projects that I think will stand the test of time, and it will always, I think, be appreciated. I mean, it's been collected by museums and institutions as well as individuals. And I think for those reasons that they're really lasting photographs. But Alejandro is someone who I admire as a person, just because he's got boundless energy and ideas, and he's just prolific, and
He's amazing. I had a great time chatting with him, and go listen to the interview, everyone. we need the views, but it was also amazing.
Yeah. And actually, I see Misha de Ritter is here in the audience. And Misha is someone who I think worked with in different capacities over time. Really admire Misha's work and photographic approach. One of the projects that was launched with Assembly was called High Up Close By. And it's these just really sensitive color photographs that were made within a church, right? If I remember correctly, Misha, within Amsterdam. Oude Kerk is maybe how you pronounce it. I probably got that wrong. But I just think Misha has such a excellent eye and can turn like the most simple things, whether it's these kind of abstract studies of walls or the natural landscape around the Netherlands into something sort of sublime and transformative. But those are the kinds of photographers that I admire for sure. Is the ones that do things that I can't do, and like see the world in a way that I have never seen before, which is I guess kind of goes back to what we were talking about. And my taste is very broad, right? Just like with music, I listen to jazz and indie and rock and folk music and electronic music and hip hop. I'm all over the place. Like with
what about reggae?
Maybe not a ton of reggae, but I do like some classic reggae. Why not? But really all over the place. And I think my interest in photography is kind of mirrored like that. Like there's, I can get super passionate about, early traditional documentary photography. And I, really, really love artists who work in experimental forms with photography, or kind of push it to the limits of what you might even think of as photography. Like it might be sculptural, or working with collage, or mixed media, or archives, and then there's a whole crop of artists who are working with AI and this new toolbox of exploring what's possible in relation to what might not be photography, but is certainly photographic, I guess you could say. And I see Gregory Eddie Jones is in the audience here, who's working on, I'll just say, a very exciting project that's coming soon that's worth keeping an eye on.
And what about your collection? What do you love to collect? What do you have in your bag?
Oh, it runs the gamut.
And what's the story behind your squiggle?
Oh, that's a whole other question. Well, let's see. So one of my first NFT photographs that I bought, I think, was Fernando Gallegos, and maybe you know him. He does work with Fellowship, and he is also a photo book lover. He's very passionate about.
We need to invite him to the show, and Misha also.
He loves coffee and he loves photo books. Those are two things that I love. He has a really beautiful shop in Mexico, actually, that brings those two passions together. But I collected one of his photographs from his collection. I actually did get one of Robin Fran's work, and Speaking of Robin, he's someone who maybe back in 2010 or something like that, we were in a museum show together in Switzerland, and we had been in touch a little bit, but not too much, and we kind of reconnected through the NFT world. It was kind of cool to circle back and see him around the same time, kind of introducing his work and exploring the possibilities for it with NFTs. But beyond the digital stuff, I mean, I collect a lot of physical art and photography. I'm like kind of looking around the room to see what I have. I have a piece by Doug Dubois, who's a friend and a really, really amazing artist. And actually, he has a really beautiful collection called My Last Day at 17 that was introduced on Assembly. There's a artist named Rosemary Cromwell who's done a lot of beautiful work. I have a portrait that she made of this dog that I just love. Christian Patterson is a photographer who I guess he created this project, which is a great example of the photography book form, called Red-Headed Peckerwood. And the project is kind of, I guess you could say, interrogating fact and fiction around this important murder mystery, I suppose you could say. I have a piece on the wall by an artist named Alison Rossiter, who collects like discarded old photography paper, and she redevelops it. Often it's just like exposed to the residual light within the package, and she processes it in the darkroom in different interesting ways, and then creates these relationships between the paper that are, kind of become these abstract forms. They're truly like just beautiful objects that somehow feel contemporary and like modern and visually striking, but sort of speak to that history of photography. Gosh, I don't know. There's an artist named Raymond Meeks who I really, really love, and I have this beautiful black and white portrait that kind of is on a stairway, and it's this kind of girl running in a field. So you, as you're like going up the stairs, you kind of feel this sense of pull and movement around the corner, which I like thinking about. But yeah, a lot of my collecting with physical art and even a little bit with NFTs has been through exchanging with artists, which is, I think, a thing that happens a lot. Like maybe within the NFT space, there's more like acquiring each other's work, and like artists who have been able to become collectors and then buy other artists' work who they really love, or trading work and like sharing work with each other, which is very much a thing that happens in the traditional space. You visit someone's studio and you really love a piece, and you're like, oh, let's like do a print trade, So I really love that, and I think a lot of my collection has kind of come from that process too.
That's beautiful, man, and very social. And yeah, we don't trust artists that don't collect.
Yes.
As a rule of thumb, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I
laughing.
haven't. My collecting is like an affliction at this point, right? Like I'm just kind of. When I was young, it was like baseball cards and all kinds of stuff, and then it became photography books, and then it started to be prints, and now it's NFTs, and it's an addiction probably.
Yeah, hoarder disorder evolving through time, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
I have the same too. Thanks everyone for listening. If you want to join the conversation as we end, raise your hands. We'll pass on the mic, and you can have the floor. I don't know, Dudley, you have any questions?
Hey, you covered. Hey, I'm back. No,
Hey,
you covered like you covered almost everything, I guess.
I have a good question actually. I wanted to ask it. Yes. So you mentioned earlier that photographers think of the negatives as 1 out of 1. So I thought that was really interesting. that the medium has like a duality hard coded in it. So no matter like what you print one time, even if you print a giant print, you have to use the negative. So that is the original. How do you see it, or how would you explain it? Because like to us as a collector or as like an uneducated viewer, it doesn't feel like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to draw those direct parallels because it's just, apples and oranges, I suppose. But, like you can think of all these versions of an image that might live online as being these, I don't know, the posters for exhibitions or the postcards that are mailed out or you know, the books that are published, whatever it is that is like the image living in the world and traveling and becoming all these other things, in relation to the physical negative, and then like through that the addition of prints or whatever it might be that is signed and numbered and approved in some sort of limited way by the artist. Within the NFT world or within the digital world, you have a one of one NFT, and it's not that it's actually the negative or anything like that, but it's sort of like this thing that you can point to as this is like the authentic source for this digital asset or for this art piece, right? Like this is the artist has signed it, they've numbered it one of one, sort of like enabled by blockchain. You can understand it as an authentic representation of that piece in the form that they would like it. Now, yeah, you can right click save as, and you can put it on a blog, and you can post it to social media, and you can do all these things where it, the color profiles might change, the like image might be cropped, like whatever might happen to it, where it's similarly kind of traveling in the world and becoming these other digital objects or replicas of the photographic image. But ultimately, within the digital space, now there's this opportunity to point back to this NFT as the ideal and authentic art piece that's minted and signed by the artist, essentially. So it's not a direct parallel, but I think you can kind of see some correlation between the negative or the signed prints as being these kind of ideal forms that are held by the artist and kind of approved and quote unquote minted by them within that digital
Would you
space.
say if someone owns the negatives, he owns like the copyrights of this work? He owns that work. He owns that image for real. And do you think there are like hardcore photography collectors that collect negatives?
There are. I mean, there are definitely some. I mean, I think copyright is a whole other thing. Like from a like legal standpoint, after a certain amount of time, things kind of become open source for older artists or artists that have passed away. But for living artists, I mean, if you create something, you own the copyright to the work as a creative, and it is only transferred if you were to like license it, essentially, at least from like a legal perspective. So, I think artists have done some creative things where they've either made their work CCO or they've offered NFTs for sale, where the acquisition of the NFT includes the copyright to the work, where like in theory as a collector you could commercialize it or do whatever you want with it. But most artists within the kind of traditional space and within the NFT space, I think, maintain a sense of ownership of their copyright for their like creative work, but look at the prints or whatever it might be, or the digital assets, the NFTs, as purely that, right? Like ownership either of the object or of the digital asset, but copyright tends to live with the artists. But I'm not a a lawyer or copyright expert.
There was a case recently with a photographer. I think some animal did some images of his that I can't remember what was exactly, and he lost the case. It wasn't his images, or was it some robot that actually did it? I can't remember.
Oh, I don't know. I do remember one funny copyright story with the monkey.
Yeah, the monkey.
Like
That was it. That was it. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, and I don't remember which way that went actually, but I think the monkey was denied copyright or something. I don't know what it was. It was.
No, he was
I'll have to
denied
look it up.
copyright. It wasn't his. It was the monkey's copyright.
Oh, the photographer. So there you go.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the monkey who created it. Yeah, I'll have to look that up again. I remember that story going around.
That was wacky, man. Like, we have to look it up again. Yes, that was crazy. He lost the images because everybody said, "Oh, it belongs to the monkey, not you," and the
Yeah.
court said, "Yeah, it belongs to the monkey." That's crazy, man. That's crazy to me.
It's a wild story because I think
Yeah.
that the photograph was actually, because it's gone viral, it's sort of taken interest from some arts institutions, and I think it's been acquired and displayed in like a museum context, from what I recall.
Imagine you are this artist, man. Like your photograph is in the museum and they credit the monkey. Oh my god!
Maybe we should try it with Gazette. We can do next Gazette.
I bet people.
Maybe we will
That's the
credit
only
your.
way we are getting in the museum, Dudley.
Yeah, we will credit your doggo. That made it.
Yeah.
Why not?
You'll have to find a new monkey to shoot that issue, because this one is now too famous.
This one is
too
famous
expensive.
already.
Yeah.
It's probably too expensive,
This monkey already won its case, man. He's living good now. Living large. All right. That was great, man. I don't know if you have any final comments before we end this.
Not really. It's been fun to connect with you guys and chat. I mean, I think over the past couple of years, it's been, I think, one of the pleasures and joys of spending time on Twitter and Discord is just kind of creating conversation and connecting with new who are interested in art. And then my passion has long been photography. Right? It's been like, gosh, 20 years. Like, I'm definitely feeling a little older, but it's been like a really fun and interesting evolution for me to kind of follow this medium that I've always appreciated into this emerging technology and what's possible. There's artists who are innovating here in really important ways. I think even in ways that have yet to be like recognized at the level that they will be. And then, the technology is being used for really important, archiving instances, or, photographic work, for example, that has this artistic and cultural value that will have that digital permanence and authenticity and collectability now. So, yeah, I think it's been a treat for me to introduce my own work in this space and kind of explore those possibilities. But wearing my other hat, it's been really inspiring to be able to have a platform to work with other photographers and artists who I admire, and be able to kind of create a space or a platform where people can look to for some of the best art photography, whether it's like emerging artists or mid-career or some well-known artists. You can always go to Assembly Curated and get lost in exploring the art and appreciating it. So I don't know if anyone's listening or happens to listen back to the recording who wants to connect. My DMs are always open, or you can pop into the Assembly Curated Discord and say hi. It's an open space for anyone to come hang out. So that's all I've got, really. I look forward to talking more, I hope.
Thank you, man. Thank you. And are you coming to New York?
I wish I would see you in New York. I'm still trying to figure out if I can swing it. There's actually, I should mention this for anyone who's based in New York. Actually, at the end of the month, there's the APAD Photography Fair. It's AIPAD. And Assembly is actually going to have a booth at APAD that will feature the work of incredible artist and photographer Rodrigo Valenzuela, who's worked in the past couple of years in NFTs and also makes these really big, beautiful mixed media photographic works. But it will be the first time that the APAD Photography Fair in New York has shown NFTs. So we're really excited to have a
Wow,
space.
that's huge, man. That's congratulations. That's gonna be so cool. You're going to be the the different kid on the block there, because everybody else is like mainstream and traditional, and you guys gonna be cool and NFT.
Oh yeah, we're so cool. No, I hope so.
Wow.
I mean, it's an interesting scene because a lot of the galleries and the collectors are really interested in vintage photography. I mean, there's a lot of contemporary work represented as well, but I'm surprised it actually took this long. But it'll be great to have those conversations about Web3 and photography there at APAD. So there's a small
Amazing.
chance I'll be there, but if not, my partner Ashlyn, who works with me on assembly, and Marjorie will be there at the booth. So if anyone's in New York, definitely check out APAD and go see the first NFT to be there.
I hope you are able to swing it for NFT NYC. We will invite you to our event, so if you can make it, definitely come meet us in real life also.
Amazing, thank you. Yeah, I would love to. That would be awesome to cross paths there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming in, man. We will invite you again in the future during 2023, catch up with you, see what you're up to then, if you want to come back to the show.
Let's do it. Yeah, I'd love to come back and hang out.
Fantastic. All right, thanks everyone for listening. Definitely go check out Shane's work. Follow, like, subscribe, buy his work. It's all good stuff. Check out the Gazette. It's out 0.01, basically free. Go steal $100 from your mom's wallet and mint 4 very fast. Our 1 out of 1 auction is live, and it already has a 0.1 bid for this week. It's an amazing artwork. You get like the full Gazette, all the animation and the love that Dudley and Amal put in those things.
Also, we have the credit card option, so you can steal your mom's credit card. You don't need to
actually
change
steal
for
your
it.
mom's credit card and go bid with US dollars because we want to test
cannot
the
bid.
show.
I think you cannot bid. You can just buy the Gazette. let's start small.
Yeah, start stealing small from your mom, and then we go big with it. All right.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone for listening. We have an amazing show planned for tomorrow with Mark Graff, and another one 45 minutes later with DJ. So tune in tomorrow. We have a busy program. Thanks everyone for listening. Bless and love. Take good care. Bye.
See y'all. Have a good.
Soon will the red light rolls.
With that, is an art for all.
When the PFPs drop, we'll mint till our wallets are full.
God, what's up?
Man, I'm good. How are you?
Good, man. How's it going, my dude?
Nothing, man. I'm just chilling. You?
You came at the end of the show, man.
Yeah.
The show ended. You requested at the end.
There is it's an interruption of of our transmission.
Yeah, I was just playing. I was just kidding. I was just playing with you.
You went into just sing our song. Next time you can sing alone.
So, when are we planning the SIG spaces?
I don't know, man. Unless we ask the CEO or like Tycoon, I don't know. We need to ask somebody in a group like.
I have time on Friday. I'm telling them we should book it because I'm gonna put other shows. I
know. I saw that in a Discord group. I don't know, man. Like, okay, Friday is cool with me, but I don't think I'll be up on space talking.
Why not?
I'm shy.
You're a beautiful man. You got nothing to worry about, man.
Thanks, man.
You're God.
All right.
What up,
Are you coming? Are you coming to New York?
No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'll be up in New York.
Oh shit, man. Lisbon.
You guys need to drop like the lyrics to like the Red Lion anthem or something like that, so we go like, learn how to sing our own song.
It's a she shanty. We are making a video clip about it. You will see. It's fucking amazing. But
I can't wait.
We are just using it now to have a soundtrack to pump the people. It's cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it's cool. Very cool. Very cool. I love it. I love the song.
Thank you, man.
All right.
All right, let's end this space, gentlemen. Please talk to them. Let's arrange it, man. It will be cool. Barcela said he might be able to do it on Friday, so let's check with him.
Okay. I'll let him know. Like we need to like to be on spaces, to be honest, because I don't know what's keeping them, but we need to be on spaces. So I'll talk to them. I also have someone I want you to have on the Red Lion interview, but maybe after New York and all that.
Yeah, sure, man. We can always put him in the program.
Aye.
I already asked Tycoon. He doesn't want to give interview. What can I do?
Mine's a she though. She's a woman, so
Tycoon is a woman?
no. Like the person I want you to have on.
Ah, it's a she. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so
Okay, I get it.
okay. Thanks.
All right, my dude. Good night.
Yeah.
Gonna go chill now.
Bye, man. Yeah.
Good
Bye-bye.
night. Bye bye. Bye bye.